It's been another long while, about a month since I have bothered to make another video, but that's because third trimester has been horrible. The worst thing I've had to experience throughout the whole time of pregnancy. This video is not the second trimester video because I decided not to do that, otherwise it would be too long. So this video is focusing on updates, problems I've been facing the past couple of weeks, and just a little catch up. So I'll just give a rundown of the second trimester. How long is the second trimester? I have no idea. It will be on the screen. In the second trimester, in February we found out we was having a little girl, and we done that with close family, just by popping a balloon, which my mum found out obviously on my gender reveal, which is my first video. I'll try and put a card up the top somewhere. And then that was supposed to be my final scan, because in pregnancy you're only supposed to get 2 scans. At this point I had 4, because I had my A&E one, my 2 12-week scans, and this is my 20-week scan. Then I saw a consultant on the 20th of March who started referring me to growth scans because my age, and they wanted to make sure the baby was developing properly. That is what we agreed to do. Every 4 weeks I have a growth scan. So I've had my 28-week one, 32-week one, and I have my 36-week one next week. So that'll be my final scan, hopefully, fingers crossed. The second trimester ends on the 27th week of pregnancy, I think, and then everything started to go downhill from that point. Okay, my hair, I just look horrible, but it's okay, we're just gonna keep on going. So when I was 29 weeks, and I want to say about 3 days, so the second week into the third trimester, I noticed more bleeding, like kind of spotting. And you get a bounty pack, and that's something that you need to look out for. It's called triage, but I decided not to call triage because I am one for feeling like I'm wasting their time, as I'm there so much, so much, so I didn't bother, and that is something I highly regret doing. So on the Friday, which was the 29th of April, I started bleeding, like a lighter, so it's actually something there. Then I phoned triage and they wanted to see me instantly because I started getting pains as well, like tightening, not contractions, but just like tightening pains across my whole belly. They could see that picking up on the monitor when I was monitored. I'll probably be sticking some pictures in from my time there. I didn't take that many pictures that time, but that's fine because there's more to come. So the plan was for me to stay in for, I think, 1 or 2 nights. I ended up staying in for 3, which is because the amount of pain I was getting. I wasn't eating much, I couldn't eat food, and they had to give me a cannula. It was a huge cannula, and there's the mark on my wrist there from that, and I hated getting it, every single second of it, which I got that on the second day, so the 30th of April. Also on the 30th of April I got my round of steroid injections because I was told I was going to be having an emergency C-section because 1, she was breech, and 2, because of the bleeding, and they said it could be placenta abruption, which is where your placenta detaches from your uterus wall, I think. I don't really know the terms for it, but that's exactly what I was told. Obviously hasn't happened, which is great news because we need to keep her in as long as possible, at least until 37 weeks, which is crazy because that's 2 weeks today. But so on the 30th of April I woke up in just a normal ward, and then I was moved to the labour ward, which is then where I had the cannula and the 2 steroid injections, which really hurt. I'm gonna be honest, they sting and they hurt and you can't walk. So that was something. But then later on the 30th, about 11:30, I got moved back to the other ward because I'm not having no baby. Then I stayed there for the next 2 nights, and I went home on the I went home on the 2nd of May anyway, I think, which was great because it was just time to chill, given like loads and loads and loads of cocodamol, which on the Tuesday after I went home I suffered massive withdrawals from. So I was having a headache all day and I couldn't do anything, and on that day I had to go in for a scan, like an emergency scan, to make sure she was growing properly and everything was okay, thank God. There was perfect blood flow and everything just seemed to be okay. With that, on the day of that scan I would have been 30 plus 3 days. I was officially into the last 10 weeks of my pregnancy, which is mental to think about. Then things started to go back to normal, just getting on with life really, not really doing much, sleeping, eating, I don't know, just stuff really. So when I then turned, it was 32 weeks, I had another round of problems. Things are just not getting any better at this point. I thought that my waters had broken, so we didn't call triage because we weren't obviously sure. My mum and dad were convinced it wasn't, so we're just going to see if I lost any more, which I didn't, which is good. That continued, it carried on as normal, moving on with my time. And then on the Wednesday, I'm not sure what the date, I'll put it on the screen. On the Wednesday, there was no baby movements. That was very, very scary because as you get bigger into your pregnancy, you feel everything because the baby has no room to move. That was horrible. But when my dad gets like concerned, then you know then there might be a problem. So he was like, okay, we'll leave it until Thursday morning, and if there's still nothing, then call the hospital. So that's what I did. Wednesday night I tried everything, having a bath, drinking fizzy drinks, like eating ice, went on my ball, laying on my side, nothing was making her move. On the Thursday we called the hospital and they asked me to go in for monitoring. I had a quick bedside scan. Yeah, that was just to check everything was okay. The consultant done internal checks with a speculum, which again is not a nice experience, I can tell you that now. But it's got to be done to make sure everything's okay with the baby. But everything was fine, it came back clear. Later that day I got a phone call from the hospital saying you need to come in for an emergency scan tomorrow. I've heard that sentence so many times throughout my 35 weeks. To make sure the baby's okay, you know, got to do anything. Even though it's making my parents drained and annoyed hearing the word hospital, because I spent most of May in the hospital. You might think, oh, everything's normal, I'm back to like being fine again, but it isn't. I think Charlie came around my house on the Saturday after he went out with his friend. He stayed over the night, and then on the Sunday, as his dad pulled up, I went to the toilet and there was fresh blood, like dark red fresh blood, and I was like, oh my god, there is no way this is happening to me right now. I went into Charlie and I was like, look, this is a situation, please, you can just go home, I'll be fine. I went to go tell my mum, I was like, look, I know I said I wouldn't go back into the hospital, but I am having fresh blood now and it's darker. And she was like, okay. And then my dad was like, yeah, maybe you should go to the hospital. So that is what we did. Me and my mum went to the hospital and I was there for 3 hours before I got seen by a doctor. It was horrible. We arrived at about 10 to 7 and we went to triage where they tested my urine. They did listening to baby, blood pressure, like all my obs and stuff. Everything came back fine, but they did move me over to the MDU, which is a maternity day unit, where they do baby monitoring. So you're put onto the monitor with the blue and pink straps, and they can monitor baby's movements, your heart rate, contractions, loads of other things on this monitor. And that is what I was on for 45 minutes. And then I went to go sit in the waiting room for 3 hours to see a doctor. Every single time I was getting pushed back, and I was worrying because I was still bleeding in the hospital. But then about 10:30 I got seen by a doctor. They did internal checks and I didn't like this doctor because they kind of made out like I was lying, because they were like, oh, there's no blood on the swabs, there's nothing that I can see, are you sure you're actually bleeding? Just kind of making me out to be like a bit of an idiot. I wouldn't have called because I hate going in to waste their time if there wasn't anything, but they're obviously was glad pictures on my phone to show them as well. Either way, they were like, you can either go home or you can stay in. And then they went out to go speak to some other colleagues of theirs, and they were like, okay, I recommend you staying in since you're having the bleeding, you had the reduced movements a couple days ago. This time I stayed in for 2 nights. Both those nights I was actually on my own. The last time I had Charlie every single night. Because he had school and exams, I had to be on my own. When you're on these units or wards, it's a postnatal ward. So it's like where you go after you have your baby. So there's loads of crying babies. Didn't sleep pretty much for both the nights I was there. In total I had about 6, maybe 7 hours at a push. So when I got home, I don't remember if I slept or not. I'm gonna be honest, my sleep is horrible. When my mum went home, she got ill, so she couldn't come and see me in the hospital, and obviously it's like something where you want your mum there for. She needed to get better and I was fine. I was too busy, like I wanted her to be okay as well as me and the baby being okay, which everyone's okay now, but then you don't really know what's going to happen. I went on the Sunday, and then on the Monday my dad came up with loads of my stuff, like pillows, blankets, other things. And then about 4 p.m. on that night, Charlie came up and saw me for a couple of hours, and then he had to leave because, again, school the next day and his exams, so totally understandable. When you're on these wards, you get monitored every 3 hours, and then it's every 6 hours for cocodamol, paracetamol, whatever other medication taken, antibiotics, etc, etc. On my time on this ward, I saw quite a few doctors because they do come around, do their rounds around the maternity, labour kind of wards, I don't really know. A doctor came around and said, look, you have a urine infection, and I was like, okay, so that's what the bleeding is. Thank you. So now I can just treat that. And then on the Tuesday, the day I was going home, a doctor came around and said, no, you never had a urine infection. I was taking a round of antibiotics for nothing, on top of sickness tablets because I was so ill. We never actually found out what the bleeding was, but I haven't had any since that time, touch wood. Backtracking a little bit, well, to the night before. So on the Tuesday night at about 8:30, I was put back on the monitor, and I was just on my phone really, because on the monitor you can't really do anything, you obviously can't get up, and I'm on the monitor normally for about half an hour, which is what you normally are. I ended up being on the monitor for 3 hours. The baby's heart rate kept going above 190 for long periods at a time, so the alarm was going off, like the beeper. My midwife came in, well, the night nurse came in and was like, yeah, we need to keep you on. So it got to about an hour and a half in, 2 hours, and then she came in again and was like, there's no progress at all, her heart rate is still high, you're losing signal, can you lay on your side? Before I did that, I got up and went for a walk and stuff, came back, and then I just laid on my side again, and the alarm was going off. In those scenarios, there's nothing you can do, you just got to sit there kind of in the dark until you get told by someone what's going on. Unfortunately for me, I never got told what was going on, so I was kind of just laying there with her heart rate being at stupid amounts. I never even found out what that was for. They're basically just CTGs. So I'm going to show you what her heart rate looked like when it was spiked to 190. So on this I was 33 weeks and 1 day, and that's when the alarm started going off for her heart rate being almost at 200, and it did reach 200 further down the CTG. Like I was saying, there's nothing you can do. You've kind of just got to sit there and really put up with it, because it's up to the midwives and nurses what goes on in that time. Luckily the next day I got to go home. It took them 4 hours after saying I can go home for them to discharge me, because they were just all sitting there doing on their phones, whatever, but it's fine, I did get to go home. That's how the 3rd trimester is going. I just thought this would be a quick update, but the video is very, very long. It's just how my experience has gone so far, and it's not been a great one. So I thought I'd continue documenting it, and yeah, hopefully it's upwards from here. There's not really much else for me to say, apart from thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Down, yeah. I've been feeling so